Good evening, everyone. It's good to be with you. Good to see you. I wanted to offer a few thoughts looking back on this past crazy week and share a few things on what's happened with me and how I've uh, done my best to try to work with my own mind. And then we can open it up for some other people may want to share your own wisdom. I was joking in the last few days with someone, and I said, what am I going to do with myself now after having so much of my consciousness filled with the existential threat, a profound angst around Trump that has filled so much? And I said, I was joking, I said, I don't know what to do with my life. And he said back to me, don't worry. I have a feeling your mind will find many and probably very creative ways for you to continue suffering. So this week I've been horrified to find that it's true. And come to the realization, this isn't a new realization, that I'm going to have to find a way to come to terms with my own mind. And I just don't see another way out. So I want to say a little about that. I thought I would read something here with, this is a poem from Kabir. Perhaps they used to read it years ago in the Dharma scene a lot. I haven't heard it in years, but you may have heard this one. Friend, please tell me what I can do about this world I hold to and keep spinning out. I gave up sewn clothes and wore a robe, but I noticed one day the cloth was well woven. So I bought some burlap, but I still throw it elegantly over my left shoulder. I pulled back my sexual longings, and now I discover I'm angry a lot. I gave up rage, and now I notice that I'm greedy all day. I worked hard at dissolving the greed, and now I am proud of myself. When the mind wants to break its link with the world, it still holds on to one thing. So I went and dug up that old poem because I thought it felt so appropriate. And so just in the last couple of days, I needed to sit down and have a serious heart-to-heart talk with my mind. And I finally said, fine, that's the way you're going to be about it. You and I are going to have to find some way to come to some peace together. And I think my mind kind of just laughed back at me, says, well, that's up to you. You can come to peace or not. Either way is okay with me. You can choose to suffer or not as you wish. But I'm going to go on and just carry on in my way. And I know some of you here I've known, I think everybody on this tonight as I look around who's here, most of you I know, some of you, a few I don't know, but most of you I know to some degree. I think we're all experienced Dharma practitioners, or whatever term you use, meditators each in our own way. And we're all sincere, and we've put a lot into that. We're not just playing around the edges. I think people are quite serious, and I think probably if we were to share, I'm guessing most, maybe all of us we might have our own conceptions about, what this is all about, our own views, but I think we would all have a deep, profound, sincere wish, aspiration, intention to move ourselves in the direction of the way I often say it is less and less suffering, and really towards what is this liberation we talk about? Some people use the word enlightenment. We all use different terms and have different understandings of those terms. And really, as I reflect on the path, there's kind of two aspects to it. There is an aspect that I don't really talk about that much, called purification of mind. And it's just the places in us where we either consciously work on it, or it just comes as a fruit of these practices where the more challenging places, and we can probably all look in our own lives and find places where we really used to suffer a lot about whatever something, and perhaps are much freer around this issue or thing than maybe we used to be in our youth. And that's just naturally without doing anything. And that would be a real, we call it purification of mind, or kind of a liberation. We suffer a lot less around this. I think back to my youth, when I suffered just tremendously around profound self-esteem issues. And that term can take many different forms, but I'll just leave it at that for now. I don't mind sharing more details about it, but it's not secret. People who know me know very well. But I would say in my late teens through my 20s, I really felt pretty, I would say, psychologically crippled almost. That may be a kind of a strong word. I don't know if people on the outside would know that, but certainly how I experienced myself. And it's an interesting thing, just however it got there, that's a whole, but it was in there. And my mind just, on its own, just created a sense of suffering feeling about being profoundly not okay. It just came out of what? It wasn't even anyone doing anything to me. That's just generated out of the mind. Now, there were causes and conditions that led to it and everything. That's a lot of suffering, right? So we can do some purification of, that's an example I'm using. We can do some purification. And using that example, it was decades later when I look back and realized that it's like, oh yeah, I thought I would never be able to get past how profound and deep and powerful this, and what a powerful identity it was around my self-worth, self-esteem, if you will, my inner despair, things like that. And I said, oh, I forgot all about it. It was kind of gone. Obviously, I'm not making claims that I don't have ways I suffer, and my own wounding and my own patterns and all of that. Of course, we're all still human beings. But that issue's pretty much kind of dissolved away. I'm not saying there aren't echoes. I don't know when we have our particular issues that come from early childhood, if we can ever get to a place as if we never had that particular wound, if it wasn't there. I don't know if that's possible or not. But certainly it's kind of just not operative for me anymore. And I'd forgotten about it over the years. It was only decades later I looked back and I realized what a relief it was. I attribute that. I certainly have done my share of psychotherapy work, which not everyone has to do that, but I found it quite helpful. But also I think a lot of it had to do with really meditation practice itself. I really feel that, and all the times of going on retreats and sitting and just with myself and having it all come roaring up and just being in the fire of the suffering and learning to work with it. In the meditation, there's all the cultivating these beautiful, transcendent, that's kind of a funny word, but meditative states. And there's that part, but then there's also the part of just learning how to be with ourselves. And through all of that, you get kind of that fire kind of cooks us and purifies us. So there's that kind of purification of mind. But I think equally along with that, an equal half or more of the path is just coming to peace with ourselves, is learning how to not be at a battle with ourselves, hopefully not being in a battle with the world. So as I was looking back to this, trying to go through, I actually do sometimes do a little thing. I'm trying to be a little humorous. I said, well, I had a conversation with my mind. I don't want you to think I'm crazy, but sometimes a little bit, it's kind of like that. I find it helpful. I actually, not that often, but once in a while, actually verbally, I don't say it out loud, but in my mind, I'll actually, the words will be, all right, fine, if that's the way you're going to be about it, you just sit there and suffer then and see how you like that. And I don't know, somehow it seems to help a little bit. Just it helps to bring a little humor maybe in the midst of the pain, but also it kind of makes a little separation. By separation, I don't mean disconnection, but rather than being just totally entangled, I can get enough space around it to hold it with a better perspective. And that's been what I've been working with when I said just a few moments ago. I don't know if I actually said it like this, but that was kind of horrified to find the state of my mind. And don't get me wrong, I feel like, the whole Trump thing has been on its own level. Um, and so I'm not diminishing the relief of that in any way. Um, but I was thinking back to, well, how did I used to suffer back pre-Trump days, when global climate change or global warming was something, this is going back a while now, was something we knew was real, but it was coming someday, as opposed to living in the actual accelerated manifestations now. What was my suffering like that? So that wasn't on my list back then. It was like, okay, yeah, that's coming someday. I couldn't have imagined Trump. All the social justice issues, of course, were still happening. Um, there was no COVID. So there's a lot of things that are so intense now weren't there. But of course, the world has always had um, its real suffering, and it's real challenging, and it's still going on. And um, um, according to the book that Eric has lent me, I guess, do I still have it? You may have given it to me, or did I give it back? I don't remember.
Not sure.
Yeah, but
But
Better
if you
Angels
still
of,
have it, you can keep it.
okay, well, I did read it, and I feel like I should give it back. We'll do, if we ever meet in person, maybe I will. I appreciate it. Better Angels of Our Nature, making the argument that people who study this, real scholars or academics, say that we're living in a time of, I may not be expressing it exactly accurately, but in the least violence. I think they're looking in terms of wars, but also just violence in society, that in recorded history. And a lot of that he was exploring why, and I think his thesis really is having to do with increases in empathy, and it's an interesting book to read. So partly you have to wonder, well, how bad um, was it then? And there's an interesting book called Fields of Blood, which is going back to kind of the history of humanity and violence. So, things keep moving in a good direction, but you don't have to look very far to find the difficulty and the suffering. So we're not trying to diminish that. And I'm certainly not when I say I still need to be able to look back, turn back, and face my own mind. I do want to say that, this part of the meditation, of course, is deepening and growing in mindfulness. And that's a mixed bag, isn't it? Because I'm kind of joking around here a little bit, but there's a little truth to it, in that hopefully when we really realize what's at stake and what's going on, we wouldn't want to live a more unconscious, unaware life. But there is a temporary kind of pseudo benefit there, in that a lot of things can happen in our minds and we just don't notice it. You don't feel everything. And you just think, oh, everything's great. It's all good. My life's great. And then you start to become more awake to yourself. And sometimes people can report that it can feel like things are getting worse. And which maybe it is getting worse. It's not for me to say, but a part of it often can be that we are more and more aware of what's going on. And I'll just recant, some of you have heard this, you only have so many stories. I've heard this story many times of when my wife came back. She was sitting a 2 or 3 month retreat. I had not been in much contact with her. It used to be when we would go on these retreats, we'd check in once in a while, but for some reason we didn't on this one. And so she came back and I asked about it. And the first thing out of her mouth was, she goes, I don't know if these retreats are so great. And she goes, I don't want to be feeling everything going on. Do I have to feel everything? Do I have to be aware of everything? There's stuff in there that I did not want to know was in there. And I can relate to that. She'd had a tough retreat, right? But of course she would want to know it, really. We'd rather see than not see what causes our suffering. And in a way, it's kind of a privilege. This is sounds a little odd, but sometimes it is said when when external circumstances settle down enough so that we really can just tend to our minds, that's kind of a privilege in a way, because you're not, when Donald Trump settled down, or they're not shelling your village, or you're not you're not having to walk several miles just to get drinking water that's not even reliable and safe, or there's food insecurity. I can just go on and on, right? I don't know if those people are so concerned with coming to terms with their minds. I think I'm guessing, trying to just know, how can I have safety and water and everything. But we start peeling away layer and layer of difficulty and stress and human misery, and it gets less and less. But I think even reminds me of another quote. Let me find it here. Just one moment. Sorry, I didn't think I was going to pull this out. Just one moment. Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche. When we look at others from afar, they may appear to have happiness, prestige, friends, and wealth. But when we get closer, we see that they are not very happy and their situation is not ideal. There is always something to complain about. Let me just pause there for a minute. So it's not for him to tell us. We should just look into our own minds and ask, well, does that ring true for us or not? There's always something to complain about. And when we get very close and examine their inner feelings, each person has his own set of worries and carries his own burden around with him. No one is in perfect happiness. So these are the things I've been reflecting on, because at first I felt a little unconscious about it. Trump's being Trump. I'd be surprised if he was acting any other way than he's acting this week, to be honest with you. It's going to be fine. And this is going to go away. But then, what is his name? Warnock and Ossoff, the two Democratic Senate candidates in Georgia. I'm not joking. From each of them, I'm getting 3 emails just today, every day. And rather than getting mad and opting out, I actually want those to keep coming in, because I do plan to. I've already given them some money. Perhaps you may wish to. And I'm actually signing up to do texting and writing letters. And I don't know if I'll really do it, but I partly was thinking of, if it wasn't for COVID, I may have gone there and knocked on doors. So, I feel that still. It's real. I care. But I noticed also, it's like, oh, I got another thing that I'm worried about. And Mitch McConnell in the Senate, and then when that's gone, I've got real things out there, but it's just my mind. I think in addition to there being real concerns that we take seriously and that we should care about, part of the mix is my mind is going to find something else. And I know this is true because just today happened to be a day where a lot of things on my plate had been taken care of, and I didn't have a lot going on, and I had some space in my day, which was nice. I didn't have many duties and responsibilities. My son was off doing this thing. My wife she's on a little at-home Zoom retreat. She's off in another room. And I just decided, well, what am I going to do? And I have all these things I started to be pulled to do. And I just made it, which would have been fine. And I made a decision. I said, no, I'm just going to try to be a little quiet and meditate a lot and hang out and look out the window and maybe read a little, just keep it really quiet. And so I was meditating, and I've shared, I think last week I was talking about how I can't always, but I've been meditating. I'm not making any grand claims, but I've been doing this for a while, and my concentration's pretty good, and I can withdraw my mind. It's actually quite nice, and I appreciate it, into the meditation, and it's like I've taken a shelter. That's different than using the concentration for insight and liberation. It's a different use of it. So I was having a day like that today. I just decided, screw it. That's what I'm going to do. And just kind of bliss out a little bit, kind of. And even then, and it's great. I mean, it is great. I'm restless and bored. Geez, what's it going to take? So I realized that I don't know about you, you may be different, but for me, there's always something that wants to move, isn't quite at peace, wants to shift. Even when I can take a day where I'm not, I feel quite blessed. I'm not worrying about food insecurity. And I worry about a lot of things in the world, but I mean, it's like, I'm okay. My health's okay. It won't always be that way, but for right now it is. And my family's okay. It won't always be that way, but for right now it is. And even being able to come into these nice states, as if, like, for those of you either at home or for those of you who've done retreat practices, some of the meditative states, or people do with drugs too, different ways, can really touch in some nice places of the mind. And even then, it's just like, okay, now what? It wants something more, even if it's quite mundane. So this is what I'm going to end with. This is what was actually quite helpful, because it brought me back into what do we really mean by non-clinging. I think if you look back to the old source Pali texts, the early schools of Buddhism, there were really these two sides to the practice. One is this purification, and really trying to disentangle these patterns in the mind that can't find a contentment and peace and a way of pure being, right? And really creates a lot of suffering. But the other side that goes right along with it, I think, the real place of non-clinging is the letting ourselves really be in a non-interfering way. And that's different than saying, well, this is just me, so, I don't have to do anything or care. No, no, no. But it's this letting, maybe it's when all else fails, just let go and let be. And I think maybe this will change in a few days. But for now, that's the lesson that my mind has been telling me. And again, it really, it was at least for a day or half a day when I really got that. Everything kind of dropped away, and it actually I guess what I want to say is, to the extent I feel I've been able to bring a sense of letting be and stopping the battle with myself, I find myself much kinder and accepting of others. I find the times when I have most ill will or hatred towards others is when I'm really having more trouble myself. And that's just me. I don't know but that may not be for you. And the more I can let myself be with, really, it's like a self compassion. It's really a self-love, but not in the egotistical way, but in a nice way. Then I find I'm much easier and natural for me to live in the heart of love for everyone. So I just wanted to share that. That was kind of my process, for whatever it's worth. And last thing I'll say is, I was also worrying that I'm not going to have any more themes for Dharma talks, because over the years I've shifted, because I used to, in the early days, I gave many talks. I could give a talk on the 7 factors of enlightenment, and the 4 noble truths, and the 5 spiritual faculties. And I knew how to do all that, and which is fine. Those actually have an important place, but I actually didn't have to bring any of me there. And naturally, without being aware of it over the years, the lists for me, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, kind of fell away, and it was more about, well, just what's real and true and authentic, and how am I working and dealing with it? And you probably know, if you hang around and listen to me, that's sort of what's happened. And then I realized, well, if I don't have those struggles, this was part of the joke with Trump. I was like, well, I'm going to run out of Dharma talks. I owe Trump. I got a lot of Dharma talks from him. But as my friend reminded me, not to worry. Richard, with a mind like yours, there'll be plenty of material and so don't worry. Anyway, I'm going to stop there.